Caleb Turner had never cared much for scarecrows. He figured if a few crows ate his crops, so be it. But this year was different. Whole rows of corn stripped overnight. The husks left in shredded heaps. He finally caved and built one. It wasn't much. An old plaid shirt, faded overalls stuffed with straw, and a burlap sack for a head. He stitched on 2 mismatched buttons for eyes and cut a jagged mouth with his pocket knife. When he stepped back, he felt an odd discomfort settle in his chest. It almost looked expectant. The next morning, Caleb noticed something strange. The scarecrow wasn't quite in the same position. Its head had tilted slightly, as if it had turned towards the house. He convinced himself it was just the wind. Then he saw the footprints. Not boot prints, not paw prints, just deep, uneven depressions in the dirt, trailing from the scarecrow towards the porch. He told himself he was being foolish, but the unease stayed with him. That night, he set up an old trail camera facing the field. The next morning, he checked the footage. At first, nothing. The field lay still under the moonlight. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the scarecrow twitched. It turned its head slowly towards the camera in a slow, deliberate motion. Then its arms jerked, its fingers stretching stiffly, as if testing them for the first time. And then, with an awkward lurch, it stepped down from its post. Frame by frame, it moved towards the camera, its limbs stiff at first, but loosening, like something settling into a body. Its head lolled from side to side. Then, just before the footage cut to black, it stopped inches from the lens. The last image showed its stitched mouth, curling at the edges. That morning, Caleb wasted no time. He tore the thing down, doused it in gasoline, and burned it until nothing remained but smouldering ash. That night, he locked his doors and tried to sleep. At 2:13 a.m., a soft rustling sound came from the porch. Then, a slow, deliberate knock on the front door. Caleb didn't move. He didn't breathe. In the darkness, just outside the window, 2 mismatched buttons stared in. The town of Cedar Grove had one rule: never touch the scarecrow in Miller's Field. Every autumn, a new one appeared, placed in the centre of the sprawling cornfield. No one ever saw it being put there. It was always just there, arms outstretched, head tilted downwards, as if watching. The scarecrow was never the same twice. Different clothes, different shapes, but the same hollow presence that made the skin crawl. Strangers laughed at the superstition. Kids dared each other to get close. Tourists passing through would try to snap pictures, but the locals always warned them, Don't get too close, don't touch it, and never ever knock it down. The legend was simple. Every year, the scarecrow had to be made from the clothes of someone recently deceased. There was a tribute, an offering, and as long as it remained standing, the town was safe. Jake Simmons didn't believe in the legends. He was an outsider, just passing through. A drifter with a habit of picking fights and running his mouth. He heard the story in the Cedar Grove tavern, laughing along with the other skeptics. The locals didn't laugh with him. Later that night, full of cheap liquor and bad decisions, he stumbled into Miller's Field with a couple of his friends egging him on. The corn stood high and still, the air thick with the scent of damp earth. And there it was. The scarecrow loomed in the moonlight, arms spread wide, clothed in an old denim jacket and dirt-streaked jeans. The head, a burlap sack, stitched at the seams, tilted slightly downward, as if watching. Jake scoffed and strode forward. He grabbed the scarecrow by its shoulders and ripped it from the post. The night held its breath. His friends muttered uneasy protests, but he only laughed. He tore at the burlap, scattering straw into the cold wind. Then, with one last display of defiance, he shoved the scarecrow's limp body into the dirt, stomping down hard on its outstretched limbs. Nothing happened. Then the ground shifted. The scarecrow's body twitched. Jake staggered back, the alcohol haze in his brain sharpening into fear. He turned to run. The corn closed in. The stalks, tall and dense, moved as if something unseen was pushing them towards him. The rustling grew louder, circling him. He turned frantically, looking for a way out, but the field had no end. His friends were gone. The night stretched too long. The moonlight swallowed by endless rows of swaying corn. Then the whispers turned to something worse. A voice, dry and rasping, like wind through hollow bones. The field had been disturbed, the balance broken, the guardian removed. A new one was needed. The next morning, the townsfolk gathered in silence at the edge of Miller's Field. No one spoke of what had happened. A new scarecrow stood in the center of the field. It wore Jake's clothes. Adam had been driving for hours, lost on unfamiliar back roads. He thought he could take a shortcut through the countryside, but his phone's GPS had betrayed him, flickering and dying without warning. No matter which way he took, he always ended up in the same place, a cornfield stretching endlessly into the cold, pale moonlight. But this wasn't just any field. There were scarecrows, rows of them, standing eerily still like sentinels of the night. Yet they weren't propped up on poles. like typical scarecrows. Instead, they stood on their own, their straw-filled legs planted firmly in the dirt, as if they had come to life and decided to claim the land for themselves. Each one posed differently. Some had their arms reaching out, as if beckoning for something, while others had their heads tilted in an unsettling mini-cry of observation, watching Adam with soulless, button-like eyes. Unease gnawed at him, but he felt compelled to investigate. He stepped out of the car, heart pounding like a trapped animal in his chest. The air felt different, thick and oppressive, carrying the scent of mold and decay, a smell that clawed at the back of his throat and filled him with dread. As he approached the nearest scarecrow, the chill in the air seeped into his bones. The closer he got, the more he realized something was terribly amiss. The scarecrow wasn't made of straw. It was leather. The skin-like material was stitched together in crude, uneven patterns, resembling a patchwork of flesh. His breath hitched in his throat as he leaned closer, horrified to see that its fingers were human, long and slender, with nails that looked as if they had been ripped from a living hand. A tangle of dark hair hung limply from its head, and the eyes, the eyes were hollow, sunken sockets that seemed to absorb the light around them, giving the impression of a never-ending void. Panic surged through Adam, and he turned to run, but his heart dropped when he realized his car was gone. The road that had led him there had vanished, swallowed by the creeping darkness that enveloped the field. The only thing that remained was another empty wooden post, standing alone amidst the rows of the corn. The world felt surreal, a warped reflection of reality, and Adam stumbled backward, desperately searching for an escape. But as he stepped away, he felt it, a heavy weight pressing down on him. His feet wouldn't move. They felt as if they were rooted in the ground. His arms stiffened against his will, and the chilling numbness spread through his body, rendering him completely frozen. As the night dragged on, he could feel the air thickening, the field whispering secrets he couldn't understand. Shadows danced around him, growing darker, pulsating with a life of their own. The scarecrows seemed to shift subtly in their positions, closing in on him, their stitched mouths stretching to eerie, silent grins. The moon hung high above, illuminating the surreal scene in an otherworldly glow. Hours passed, or perhaps only moments, until dawn broke, the sun rising over the horizon and casting a pale light across the cornfield. When morning arrived, everything looked the same as it had before. The field remained untouched, the scarecrows standing vigilantly in their positions, except now there was one more scarecrow among them. It wore Adam's clothes, tattered and torn, the fabric blending into the display of others. And in the distance, the corn rustled, waiting for the next unlucky traveller to lose their way and join its haunting collection. In the quiet farming town of Elridge Valley, an ancient barn stood on the edge of a vast open field. Its weathered wood creaked with age, and its roof sagged under the weight of countless seasons. The barn had seen generations of farmers come and go, but the most peculiar aspect of this place was the scarecrow that stood guard outside. The scarecrow was unlike any other. It wore a tattered plaid shirt and frayed overalls, its head a misshapen mass of rough canvas stitched together, topped with a wide-brimmed hat. Locals whispered that it was a guardian of sorts, a protector of the barn and the land surrounding it. But as harvest seasons passed, it became clear that something was amiss. The scarecrow seemed to shift, its position changing overnight, its arms sometimes outstretched, other times lowered, as if communicating with the shadows that danced around it. Leela, a curious young woman who had recently inherited the family farm, noticed the scarecrow's strange behaviour. After moving back home, she felt an inexplicable urge to uncover the barn's secret. One chilly evening, she decided to investigate the barn after hearing unsettling scratching sounds from within. As she approached, the moonlit illuminated old structure, casting long shadows across the ground. The scratching grew louder, echoing through the walls like desperate claws against wood. Heart racing, Leela pushed open the creaky door, revealing a dimly lit interior filled with the scent of mildew and dust. The scratching stopped abruptly, placed by an eerie silence that hung heavily in the air. Leela scanned the barn, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, revealing old farm tools and forgotten memories. But something felt off. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift, twisting and curling like tendrils reaching out for her. Then she saw it. The scarecrow standing just outside the barn door, but it was now facing a different direction, gazing into the field as if waiting for something to appear. Leela's heart raced as she stepped back, but the moment she did, she heard a loud bang from inside the barn, as if something had fallen. Summoning her courage, she stepped inside again, the scratching sounds resuming, now louder and more frantic. It was as if whatever lurked in the shadows was trying to break free. Leela felt a chill crawl down her spine, and an overwhelming instinct told her to leave. But just as she turned, the barn door slammed shut behind her, trapping her inside. Panicking, she rushed to the windows, but the glass was too dirty to see out of. The scratching intensified, resonating through the wooden beams, echoing like a heartbeat. She glanced back at the scarecrow, now a dark silhouette against the moonlight, and noticed something unsettling. It was slowly moving closer to the barn. Leila's breath quickened as she fumbled for her phone to call for help, but the screen flickered and the call dropped. The scratching morphed into what sounded like whispers, calling her name. Leila. Leila. It echoed around her, twisting her thoughts and filling her with dread. Suddenly, the barn began to tremble, and she felt a rush of wind sweep through, throwing her against the wall. The scarecrow's form flickered in and out of view, shifting between the barn and the field, and as if travelling through an unseen doorway. She realised with horror that it was drawing power from the barn, feeding off her fear. Desperate to escape, Leila rushed to the door, her hands fumbling with the handle. The scratching turned into frenzied banging. A low growl reverberated through the wood. Just as she managed to pry the door open, she glanced back one last time. The scarecrow stood right behind her, its head contorted in an unsettling expression, as if it was savouring her fear. The night air swallowed her as she bolted outside, stumbling into the open field, but the landscape shifted beneath her feet. The barn was gone, vanished into darkness, as if it had never existed. The field stretched endlessly before her, illuminated by pale moonlight, and the scarecrow was now positioned far off in the distance, its watchful eyes glimmering with a sinister light. Leila felt an overwhelming sense of isolation wash over her. There was no way back. The barn had become a phantom, appearing and disappearing at will. The scratching sounds faded into the night, leaving only the quiet rustle of the wind in the corn. With fear gripping her heart, she turned to run, but a voice echoed in her mind. You cannot escape the harvest. The scarecrow's figure loomed larger in the distance, its power growing stronger with each passing moment. From that day forward, the barn would appear on foggy nights, and anyone brave enough to venture close would hear the haunting scratching sounds and whispers beckoning them into the darkness. And the scarecrow, ever watchful, stood sentinel over the land, waiting for the next curious soul to become part of its eternal harvest.